Hey guys, it's Sunday. It's Matt. Had an issue yesterday, and it's happened a couple of times, and that is the car having some difficulty firing while I'm cranking it to start it. I was at Cars and Coffee yesterday, rolled in, everything's working good, the car's running great, and when I go to leave, it wouldn't fire, and then it let out this ginormous backfire. People actually ducked. It was kind of funny. I felt bad also, but it was also embarrassing because, all kinds of car people around and your car doesn't want to start and then a giant backfire. So besides it being embarrassing, it's just not right. So I'm trying to fix that. That all the starting issues started after I installed an electronic solenoid on the Holley carburetor to drop the idle when the key gets turned off, because the car was having some dieseling issues earlier, because very low vacuum on the camshaft, so I had to have the throttle blades open a little bit further than normal. What this allows me to do, tell you what, let me turn the camera around and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Our assembled rotor with the safety wired All right, so you get this big electronic solenoid right there hooked up. It sits behind the throttle linkage. When it has power, it kicks let me set my glasses down here. It kicks the throttle up just a little bit, about that much, which gives me the proper idle that I need. When you turn the key off, the solenoid drops away and it allows the carburetor to close completely, thus preventing or eliminating, I should say, reducing the possibility of dieseling. However, when I installed this out of ease of install, I just ran the wire right down here to the positive terminal on the coil, which has power when the key is turned on. My issue, I think, is that when I turn the key on and I start cranking the motor over, I think I'm getting low voltage, which is causing that. I think it's got too much of a voltage draw, and it's causing my coil to not get a lot of all the juice it needs. So I've got my volt ohm meter set up over here, sitting right there, currently reading 0. So what I'm going to do now, jump in the car here. Let's see if I can get, yep, there we go. Set the camera here so you can see that gauge, and put this thing in neutral. And I'm going to go ahead and crank it over, turn the key on. What do we got? Ooh, that's already not good. I'm already at 9 volts. Should be 12 or better. Let's see what happens when I turn the key to start it. Yeah, I'm surprised it actually fired right there. So yeah, I'm down to like 7 volts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rewire that thing, get it off of the coil wire, because that's just drawing way too much power from the coil. All right, so just as a quick test, I removed the wire that goes to that solenoid, and I'm going to test the voltage at the coil right now. So there's the voltometer sitting on the hood. Let's get in here, turn this on, see what that sucker does this time. So not much more sitting here right now, which is not really a good sign. Let's see what happens when I turn the key. Not nearly as much of a drop. So that's a plus. Let me fire this thing up, see what kind of voltage I get while it's running. That's not good. That voltage is all over the place. All right, so it is currently has one other draw on there, which I think I may have to get rid of. Let me unplug my electric choke and now check my voltage. See if that helps any. Alright, key back. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's see what happens now. I don't get that. That makes no sense. That's bizarre. The lower my engine RPM, the higher the voltage. But I know I definitely got to rewire that choke and solenoid. So more wiring to do. All right, so it's been rewired. Not nearly as clean because I didn't put any of the wiring harness cover on there. And you can't see it here, but it's zip tied to the bottom of that heater hose. Comes over here, and then it's hitting this continuous duty 40 amp solenoid that I have that powers an amp and a gauge cluster and some other things. So that is keyed. It runs out here to my coil and over to the carburetor solenoid. So when I turn that on, voltage to my coil will not be affected and the solenoid should still work. All right, so that solved the problem. Let me jump over here in the car. We will fire this up. I gotta quit making noise when I get in and out of the car. All right, we are in neutral. Let's see what happens here. Started nice and easy. Idle's low because the engine's cold. It should be idling right around 900 to 1,000. But when I shut it off, I can feel the gas pedal kick back up underneath my foot just a tad. So the idle solenoid is working, and car didn't diesel when I shut it off. Granted, it does that a little bit more when it's hot or warm. This thing actually runs nice and cool. So boom, one problem down. Next problem that I'm going to sort out here, it's not really a problem, but I'm going to be adding a battery disconnect. I'm going to figure out a place to mount it somewhere here near the battery. That way when I park it and it's not going to be moving for a while, I can shut it off and not have my battery potentially drain. Or if I have any kind of an electrical issue, I can kill it without having to worry about trying to disconnect one of those battery terminals. So that's the next step. All right, so I couldn't find any place in here that was an easy place to mount the battery disconnect switch and that was easily accessible. What I ended up doing was bringing the wires through the vent in the radiator support there, the battery ventilation, and mounted it right there. Easy enough to get to when I open the hood, and there she blows. So obviously needed a longer battery cable to go to the ground because that one used to just go straight to the block. So I had to take a couple inches off of that, mount it down here, put a new end on it, and then below that you'll see the negative cable that runs through here, down there, and grounds on the block right there. Right there. So there she blows. Next project is going to be installing those two gauges. After I clean up some tools here, I'm going to replace these gauges here. I like the look of those gauges. They match the numbering pretty closely, the way they're laid out. They look the era. But the problem is, one, the convex lens that's on there makes them really hard to read during the daytime because they get weird reflections on them. And the lighting at night sucks, and you can't see what's going on. Let's see if you can tell. So you can see the odometer gauge next to it lit up nice and bright. You can read what's going on. But at nighttime, those things are so dim you can't see what's up. So that's a Sport Comp 2 series air fuel, wideband air fuel ratio gauge. So I bought Comp 2 or Sport Comp 2s to replace both the oil pressure and water temp. So that's the next thing. All right, let's see what we got. Water temp gauge. The nice thing is all the wiring's already run. So also basically I'm gonna have to do is replace the gauge and potentially the sending unit. Most likely the sending unit. Let's see what we got here as far as the sending unit goes. And of course the end of the wiring is different. And the wiring ends here are all different too. Alright, so it looks like I may have to do some changes to the wiring ends that are in the console as well, because these are spade terminals on here, and the ones that are in there now, if I remember correctly, are like a stud. Let me take a quick look at the oil pressure here. That is very similar to what's on there, but it is different still. So I will have to swap out that sending unit for the oil pressure, as well as the sending unit for the water temperature, and some ends inside, because again, same thing. So I'm gonna go to work. All right, just a quick look at the back of the. I've already pulled this is the lighting for the two older looking gauges. There's the mounting, and then as I mentioned, you can see all the wiring attaches via studs with nuts. So I'm going to swap out all the ends and all that wiring and put spade terminals on there. Female spade. So in front of the console, you can see it's just 4 screws that hold that little base plate on. And I'm back to work. Yep. The new gauges, it's nice having all 3 of the same, and they're reading correctly. The previous gauges, my oil pressure was always really high, and I was concerned that potentially it was a problem with the pressure relief valve in the oil pump. And I thought it might have been sticking, because it was always, the other previous gauge was always pegged at 100 psi until the car got warm, then it would come down to like 50, which is ridiculous. This is reading appropriately for the pump that's in here. So